been suffering for forever. So it was a big deal. All right, we're live.
We are live and broadcasting.
All right, Stephen, call us to order.
Okay, Tim Riley.
Here.
Howard Hellman.
Here.
Eric Grano.
I'm here.
Okay.
Anything going on with REAC today?
No, we have no action items.
Okay.
We have no new business. We have no old business, but we do have a treasurer's report.
There was 2 checks written, one to our attorney and one to our account. Other than that, we're in good shape with the shape we're in.
All right. Well, I hate to belabor the meeting. Anyone have any questions on those 2 checks? All right. Well, Stephen,
Okay.
I'm going to make a suggestion.
Yes.
Maybe we should only schedule REAC when we have some actions on REAC.
We could do that, yeah.
Because, the film is valuable.
Because, yeah, even the financials, I mean, we could wrap that up annually and do the same thing.
Well,
There's 12 checks,
Yeah.
12 checks, each of them for the bookkeeper who did the books.
All right, anyone else want to make some, funny comments for our studio audience? Okay. All right, so, Stephen, read the minutes.
Okay.
Or the minute.
Called to order at 9 a.m. the Rockland Economic Systems Corporation meeting. There was no action items, there was no new business, there was no old business. The treasurer reviewed the financial report. There was no comment, and
There were comments, but they weren't.
and that's it.
Does anyone want to add to the minutes? It took me longer to ask the question than the minutes.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, well, we're adjourned.
Meeting adjourned. 9:02.
Sliding into the idea. Call the roll, Stephen.
Okay. Tim Riley.
Yep.
Howard Hellman.
Here.
Eric Dranoff.
Here.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Stephen, tell us about the Memorial Park Homes inducement.
The only thing I can tell you about Memorial Park is I got a call yesterday. They've asked us if they could table the matter until August. Got a call from Michael Klein. He said he was talking to his client, and I guess, I don't know if we need to go into the detail for a project that's been temporarily withdrawn, but they said they would like to just hold off. They're reconsidering some elements of the project and would like us to consider reconsidering it at our August
But
meeting.
let me ask you this. There were times that when summer comes, we kind of say, see you in September, unless there's something really pressing. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Would they be okay with going to September?
We can tell them that. I don't think it's
I mean, if they need to get it done, they need to get it done, but I
I
don't
don't
know, Ron wants to take an extended vacation this summer. And, don't you? Of course you do.
I think the word is continue.
That's a fair summary. The only item that I could think of is the spot at Sloatsburg. Michael Klein has contacted us, and he would like to do a pre-closing sales tax. That would require a resolution, so
Yeah.
that could come up in July.
All right, so let's,
Play it by ear.
yeah,
Yeah, I actually sent him an email yesterday, explained what we would need, and I expect he will get that to us
Okay.
pretty quickly.
Good.
So,
all right. All right, so talk to Michael about this other one, Stephen, Memorial Homes.
Yeah, and even this other, yeah, right, they should, we can just, as a matter of knowing proactively, we'll just make sure, we will have a July meeting. There are some things I think we're gonna have to have at August. Right now, I don't anticipate, usually we don't have August meetings, so, there's Raj.
Okay, moving on.
Good morning,
Champagne
Raj.
Hudson
Good
and
morning,
Dave
Raj.
Raj. Good morning, Raj. Let me do that for you, brother.
Come on, get over the chair.
It's all right. That's all covered.
Raj, just to let you know, the inducement resolution for this project, the Spring Valley Memorial Park Homes, the applicant withdrew it. just withdrew because they wanted to reconsider some elements at their request, so we're not considering it. And then we were just talking about considering having our meeting, barring some pressing issue that may require change, that we would not have an August meeting, we would have a September.
Okay,
Okay.
so Champlain Hudson.
Okay, Champlain Hudson, we had, over the last week and a half, we had five public hearings, one in Village of Haverstraw, Village of West Haverstraw, each of the towns affected, which would be Stony Point, Town of Haverstraw, and Town of Clarkstown. And so we had to have 5 public hearings. These also impact school districts, Clarkstown School District, Nyack School District, and the North Rockland School District. Going back to the public hearings, we had the 5 hearings, and there were no, all but one, there was no public comment, participation, or attendees. The only one that did have it was at Stony Point, and that was one gentleman came and spoke. Again, we broadcast it live, we recorded it. The summary of his comments were that he's recommending 2 things: that we not have our public hearings during the day at 9:30. We should have them in the evenings, so public can, more members of the public could come. That's one thing for the board to consider. And then part 2, he voiced his strong opposition that we should not authorize giving them a pilot, that he used the example of the Algonquin pipeline that recently went through North Rockland, didn't get a pilot. He said he didn't know the particulars of that, if it was an apples to apples comparison, but since they didn't ask for a pilot, why should Champlain Hudson? Was there any other points? That was the strong gist of it.
Okay.
So that was the only comment. It was just one gentleman out of 5 public hearings.
Okay. All right. Stephen, you have the resolution?
Sure. I guess if you want to make a motion to authorize.
Yeah. Anyone want to move the resolution?
I'll move.
Second. All right, call the roll, unless anyone has any comment or questions before. All right, call the roll.
Okay. Raj Mark,
Yes.
Tim Riley,
Yes.
Howard Hellman,
Yes.
Eric Tran.
Yes, sir. Okay. I
Okay.
want to bring up a question to our council. It's not anything we need executive session. We're governed by Robert's rules of procedure. There is in the more recent Robert rules, at least in edition 10, which is a few years old now, for boards that are less than 12 people, you do not need to go through the formalities of motions and seconds of motions. And the reason behind that is because in small boards, one person can essentially hijack a proposal by no one ever second this motions. So there are some more streamlined procedures for boards under 12 people. And the reason I bring it up is I wonder if for public bodies, those more relaxed Robert's Rules procedures apply. Anyone? Now, understanding, of course, and I'm going to make a bold statement here, although most organizations are governed by Robert's Rules, most organizations follow Robert's Rules, all right? So that's why I think is another reason why these procedures are streamlined. So, if no one certainly can shoot from the hip and give me a response of whether we can go with the more relaxed, or even if you want to go with the more relaxed, I just bring that up. So this way we don't comply with Robert's Rules and it's strict formality, it's never an issue.
I have absolutely no knowledge of.
Are you my wife? Because she always looks at me and says, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, I feel like I'm right at home.
Legal advice.
No, I'm not asking for legal advice. I bring up this
My level
issue.
of confidence, I have not heard of this issue.
Okay.
I'll just, because I do this for villages and towns too, so.
Yeah.
And I would equate this board to that as a municipal body.
Yeah, sure.
So I think your bylaws say you utilize Robert's rules.
But these are Robert's Rules.
Right, they are Robert's rules,
And it's
but
just a relaxed version
But
of
what
the rules for smaller boards.
because you're a public body. If you were like a regular board, like a private board, I would agree with relaxing it. But as a public body, it's being videotaped, I would stick with the formalities. The motion seconded because he's keeping minutes, and God forbid it's ever challenged. I think it's better
I
practice.
think
to do
that's
it
an
that way.
intelligent response.
That's the way to do it. Private board's different because I know like on not-for-profits, it's a different situation altogether, but as a public body.
They're governed by Bedlam's rules.
Yeah, pretty much. But, because I know your bylaws say you're subject to Robert's rules as amended, but as a public body, I would definitely stick with the formality.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
That's my suggestion.
Enough said on it?
I would only add that I think the procedure has worked well all these years, and it gives people an opportunity when a motion is made to voice any concerns or
Well, you can
questions.
still voice the concerns, you have discussion, but not in the formal thing, because that would be under Robert's rules. The motion is made, and then you discuss, and oftentimes that's just not how the dynamics work. I mean, it's fine with me, I don't care either way, but I just wanted to.
And given that I've been living, that's, always attacking those.
It's not
Way
broken.
up front.
Grocer's rule is if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it.
Okay, and we don't want to create a new Murphy's rule, right? Because then anything that can go wrong will. So, all right. I just had to get that off my chest. Thank you. I feel much better about that.
We've got, one new business item, and I guess an old business, but I'll bring up the new business. Recently, our pilot fee schedule has been in place for a number of years, and it's a staggered, it's a 1% of the first number of dollars, 2%, 3%, and it spells it all out. And it's really structured. It's structured primarily for what was the most common format of pilots that we always would do. And usually, for simplest way, it would be, a percentage off the full assessment, and then you could calculate what somebody would get. It would start at 50%, and then the assessment abatement would lower to 45, 40, or some variant of that degree. And our fee schedule was easily applied to that. More and more, there was always an outlier here or there, because again, with our pilots, there is no predetermined structure. It's really kind of to largely what's negotiated. There would always be an outlier here or there that didn't match up perfectly. But now we're seeing more and more that I'd say most, I wouldn't say all, but many of our pilots are simply not, you can't apply our formula to them. They're structured too differently. And this came to a head about a week and a half ago. I guess it's, it's no secret. Champlain Hudson, when they were looking at their pilot, they looked at our fee schedule and their attorney, and I think, Lino, you were on that call as well. And they simply said, we can't seem to match up our structure to your schedule. That's just the background of it. So we took a look at it and we said, okay, let's look at what other IDAs are doing. Let's look at, our fee schedule. Let's see, the goal was, could we come up with a fee schedule that could almost be universally applied? And I think we've come up with something or some recommendations I'd like the board to consider. But I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's done a great job of really kind of working on this, running different formulas and such. And Lisa, why don't you go ahead and I'll turn it over to you.
So I'm just going to pass this around. This is our current fee schedule, and this is what I came up with. So I made a graph, basically just showing 3 or 5 different projects, and you can see based on the bar graph how much they would pay us or pay the IDA fee, and then we have 4 different options. So option 1, they would pay 1% of the taxes paid. Option 2 is 1% of the total taxes paid for the first 2.5 million. Yep.
Let's just wait for everybody.
Oh, sorry. So there's 5 projects on the paper, and you can see the current pilot fee, and then each of the 4 options. Option 2 is 1% of the total taxes paid for the first 2.5 million, then 0.25% after. Option 3 is the 1% of the total taxes paid for the first 2.5 million, then 0.5 after. And then option 4 is basically the same as option 1, but with a cap of 500K fee. So you can see based off of these projects what the current fee is. and then the other options that we kind of taken a look at and wanted to get your opinion on.
Just to kind of add to a little bit, and Lisa referenced this, because our fee schedule based was on the delta between 100% taxes and the reduction. In fact, it could be skewed if somebody wasn't a good negotiator, they'd be unduly punished. Or if it was just simply a pilot that said, we're just going to maintain, freeze the taxes, you couldn't really apply it. Or if it wasn't an assessment-based abatement percentage, but it was just a flat payment amount and negotiated assessed value, so you're paying 100% of an assessed value, again, our fee you couldn't apply it. Again, go ahead.
How does this net out in terms of revenue to the IDA, number one? And number two, my thought is, if there has not been any objections by project applicants to this type of fee structure, and we feel that maybe perhaps we're getting too much of a fee as an IDA for certain projects, whatever reason, in terms of the dynamics of what's involved in the project, would it be better than just to have the applicant pay a higher amount in the pilot? So this way the benefit goes to the public, right? So for instance, you have in the KLM house, I'm just looking at that where it says 128,439. If under a new structure, there would be less of a fee, why not proportionally just raise the amount that's being paid under the pilot? They're gonna have to pay that number anyway, so it might as well go into the tax base, no?
Well, now we're imposing, and I just, I hear what you're saying, but because we keep ourselves at arm's length on the negotiations, now we're injecting our fee element into that.
That's true, that dynamic.
And then it adds an element of, it adds an element of uncertainty on every project. We're just having it, I'll go back to, and this is why we wanted to have this discussion. And by the way, we do not have to settle this today. We can kind of absorb what's being said today.
Good, that means something to live for.
Yeah, and then we can talk about it again and again. But so we kind of looked at it and said, what are some of the variables? The assessed value is a variable. The negotiated amount, that delta, the percentage reductions are variables. You have 2% increases every year. And we said, what was the one thing that we know we could count on, or at least intelligently project? And it's, what's the person going to pay? That's the one thing we could count on, regardless of the structure. No matter whether you're assessed base, flat cash amount, whatever your structure is, it's kind of bulletproof to any format. And that was our key thinking, was that we wanted to have, quite frankly, so that if somebody out there, whether it's a Champlain person or any applicant, can look at our fee schedule and say, okay, that's my fee, versus us having to try and calculate it, and quite frankly, even making some objective calls of what's applicable or not. The other factor in this, of course, was, are we getting too little? Are we getting too much? So we tried to come up with a formula that was representative, not because we're bound by it. What's comparable out there with other IDAs in our region, and the other IDAs have their own formulas, their own particulars, and Lisa kind of, fleshed those all out as well, and that's where we came in with it. And we kind of said, okay, well, if we can protect ourselves against getting, because if you see on this chart, there was a couple where we just charged $2,500 because there was simply no way to that was the minimum. And there was nothing wrong with that. People didn't, their structure just didn't, if you took our structure, that's how it shook out. But then when you take another project, like there's this one project where our fee, if you took our current structure, would be $2.5 million on a pilot that we don't negotiate, that we don't, have anything to do. And you could say, is that excessive? And again, I'll leave that to the board to make that decision. Or even, quite frankly, you can have, and I've had this conversation with taxing entities, have asked about our fees, because maybe the applicant kind of complained about a fee, and the taxing entity said, we're the ones giving up our taxes. How come you guys had the, cashed out, big? So trying to find a balance. And this is where like that element of a cap came in on top of everything.
So I have a
Yes.
question for you. Have we lost any pilot because of our fees? That you know?
Good question.
I don't believe we have.
Okay, so if you're gonna give the benefits, the fees are the fees, all these years, the system's working for us. So for a $203 million project, if they're gonna complain about their fees, they shouldn't be in the project. It's as simple as that. If they're coming for benefits, you know, they're business people. Their job to save money, right? For our perspective, if you want the benefits, you gotta pay the fees. And the fees is working for us. My suggestions, I would not change anything unless there's truly complaints every single time.
That's exactly what Lisa said.
And you know what else? Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
if they're getting to a point where they're negotiating a pilot, they're already way past deciding to do the project or not.
Absolutely.
So
They're already in.
that would play to, whether it's 1% or 2%, or we get rid of the cap, then we don't cap it. The fee is the fee, whatever it is. Again, I want to go back. The genesis of this was not so much that this wasn't about us making too much money or too little money. It was, we've got too many structures going out there. People are being more and more creative, which is actually the beauty of our pilot system as compared to other counties where it's very formulaic. They look at the investment, they look at the years, they look at the, and it's one flavor. Ours are each individually negotiated. So we were just trying to come up with, the genesis was to come up with a schedule that could be applied against any pilot. And the one constant we knew is, what are you paying in taxes? And using that as a formula.
So just to dumb it down for me, the only problem I have is if we get a $800 million deal, they're gonna pay an exorbitant amount of money for the pilot to us. Is that correct? Is your point that we should have a cap? And I don't.
Well, no, I'm okay with not doing a cap. That's kind of a secondary issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
I just, I don't wanna, we've done well, and I have no problem with it, but I don't wanna reap too much of a benefit for the reasons that you explained, Eric. At the end of the day, it puts more weight on the entire deal. I wanna make sure we get our share and et cetera, but that is something that maybe I would, listen to in the sense that, some of these really big deals, we all go back to the data centers and the money they pay,
Most of our deals our pilots are now, the norm is 15 years, and they're, and it's a reasonable amount. And, you might, again, I'll go back to what I said, you might have this outlier here or there. That outlier that gives us a big fee goes back to what Lisa also suggested, was we've been kicking around, are there programs that we could do that could more directly assist small business?
Right.
And this could be a potential funding source if, say, someone is paying us a big fee that we allocate, and I know, Ron, you would reference this, of setting up a structure where a portion of the pilot fees go into a pool of cash that can help small businesses that aren't typically in our wheelhouse of how we can help people, because that is a gap. So that's something.
But help them in what way with all limited powers?
That's part two of that challenge, which we haven't completed out yet, but we've been talking to other IDAs, what do they do for small
Yeah,
businesses?
our powers are much more limited
Yeah,
than a lot of IDAs.
I will say.
Yeah, we don't give money. You fellas being in and around the world on this stuff, what do you see out there?
General thinking would be that the portion of the fee payable that would be for non-eligible IDA purposes would not be a fee paid to the IDA, but paid to a different entity as a condition of getting IDA financing. And the other entity could be a local developer.
Kind of like developers having to build parks when they build the development.
So,
Now,
you could play.
The issue
But we don't want to do
that gets very subjective.
Yes, and
And
these are things for the board to think about.
It's
Yeah.
just a question of, do you want to go there?
yeah, because that is something that we will have many people knocking on our doors with those types of things and having to sort out then who's worthy of it, who's not worthy of it. That's a difficult situation to put us in.
And what are we,
Not knowing the businesses that will be asking for the money.
Yeah.
To your point, and how we're securing this, that they will pay us back.
Right.
Running a loan
What happened
program,
to
I
that?
would strongly
It's
advise.
not
Project?
necessarily going to be a loan. It could be a grant.
A grant.
I'd rather do a
I want
grant
a
than a
pay
loan.
raise.
A loan is, we ran the revolving loan in the REDC for years, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, and we had a short form, IDA application process.
Yeah, I mean, we can still do that, like,
You know,
it's just food for thought, that's all for down the road.
You know, the one thing that I've always liked about our IDA is it's set up in a way that for those that may come after us, they would not be easily taken advantage of as IDA board members, or to protect against people making deals they shouldn't make. You know, we've all been at this a long time, where all of us have a good sense of what's right and what's wrong, but I don't know that we're gonna be here in Rockland, all of us another 50 years from now, or 25 years from now, you know what I'm saying? So I think we have a lot of stopgaps, a lot of fail-safes in place to protect us against a lot of the issues that arise in how other IDAs operate. We're very conservative, and it's worked out well. And I would love to see a way to help other businesses, and certainly in a creative way that has these guardrails on it, but just the subjective component that concerns me.
Well, and that's where, to your point, and I think, that's why we've been moving slowly on this, because there's an element we haven't served well by staying in our lane and doing what we do. That's what we do. So if there's some program that we're not even anywhere near proposing to the board to consider for small businesses, it would be something that would maybe, if not stay in our lane, would stay close to our lane, maybe go over the white line a little bit, but not way out there, like loan programs. Administratively, that's a whole different ball game.
Sure.
That is a nightmare. Grants,
The due diligence on that too is.
is a program impactful? You could go through, set up a whole administration of a program with money allocated, and you end up helping 30 companies. Is that impactful for us to dedicate that time and effort to help 30 companies that may or may not really need it? I mean, these are the issues that we're looking at. Bringing it back to the fee schedule, again, we're looking for something that will give us a fair return, that will, on the bigger projects, the fees will be higher than small projects. If you're getting a big break, your fee is going to be higher than if you're not a good negotiator with municipalities. I mean, we're trying to weigh all these things, and we've got some suggestions. So if you don't mind, and we'll follow up based on what we talked about and give you a recommendation of what we think. It sounds to me, I'm hearing the board says we don't need to worry about capping. Right? Is that? And that's not going to be applicable to 99% of our projects.
Yeah.
Can I make a few observations, not recommendations for the board to consider? When you look at your current pilot formulation, it talks in terms of total gross benefits, but when you do the math, what it's calculating is not benefits, it's just difference in before taxes and after taxes. And so that's, what you're charging for is not necessarily any benefits that the project would receive had it not gone the IDA route. I think that's an important part of the assessment. A related factor is with the new prevailing wage policy of the IDA. There is going to have to be a calculation of benefits, and we don't want to confuse your fee benefits with the prevailing wage benefits, so perhaps different terminology may be used, or alternatively, link the two together.
Yeah.
And those are just thoughts to help you as you think your way through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like harmonizing the two.
I'm of the ilk that if it's not broke, don't fix it. But that said, what, I know, Lisa, you said you did some research with some other IDAs around the state. Apparently, the thing bubble to the top is a great idea since we're just doing this.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are a bit complicated based on the type of project. There was a certain percentage, so it was very like complex. And of course, those IDAs, they negotiate the pilots, so that's kind of different. There was a one IDA that is somewhat local that does option one, basically 1% of the taxes paid. That's it. That's what they do. You do a pilot there, and that's what happens. I think the big issue that Steve and I were discussing was if you look at the last project, the NOP, based off of our current pilot fee, because we can't calculate it, we get the minimum. Whereas if you look at the other options, we would get a higher fee because we can calculate how much they are paying, their estimated taxes paid with the pilot. So I think that's the main issue of why we're bringing this up, because our current, as much as you say it's not broke, there is situations where we're not.
Yeah, I think it is broke. I guess I would argue the point that our fee schedule, it wasn't broke, but now because people are getting so creative with the structures of pilots, we essentially have, just quickly, again, to go back, we have pilots where you take the 100% of the projected assessment and you negotiate a percentage discount off of that over a course of time. And you can calculate what the benefit is, the way our current fee schedule is. Then you have pilots where the assessment is out the window, it's irrelevant, it's a flat cash payment. We've done deals like that where it's, doesn't matter what we're assessed, we're paying you X number of dollars a year. Then you have pilots where the actual assessment is the negotiation, because there's ambiguity about that, and they're paying 100%. If a company's paying 100% of the negotiated assessed value, you can't apply our fee schedule to it. And that's where you'll see like the 2,500, which is our minimum that we happen to have in there.
And
so
that's the NLP pipeline scenario?
Yeah. And that just.
So they're paying 100% under their pilot. So what benefit are they getting by the pilot?
Well, because, right, but they are getting a benefit because they've negotiated aggressively to get that assessment down. So,
All right.
So the municipality at the start said, well, we think it says you to be assessed at X, and they're saying assessed at Y, and they reach a compromise. But that may work for the applicant, that may work for the municipality, but it doesn't work for our fees,
But the assessment that the municipality is coming up with in that negotiation is a guesstimate of what the property should be assessed at. It's not at that moment what the property is assessed at, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like negotiation is a negotiation from an established assessment. It's the parties trying to figure out what it should be assessed for.
Right.
So I see that being the same thing then. There's no way to put your arms around then what the benefit is because of the negotiation. So if someone effectively is not getting the benefit, in option one, paying $2.6 million would be a little punitive. In option two, paying $670, because the negotiation on what the property should be assessed at, I don't think really should even factor into it if there's not a fixed number that's already been set.
Right. You're hitting the very issues that we said, that's where we kind of went full circle to saying, well, what's the one thing we'll know? And we said, the taxes they're gonna pay. And then let's take a reasonable return on that, which we didn't pick 1% out of the blue. We looked at Lisa went and looked at, and by the way, looking at the other IDAs, they were all the regional, lower and mid-Hudson IDAs and others. And we said, okay, we took that just as a starting point. So if we took 1% of the actual taxes paid, and you project it out, you use kind of the standard of 2% increase a year, which is what seems to be the norm now, as a projection. We said, okay, that seems to give us a reasonable return on our taxes, on our fees. So again, there's no one way to do this. We're trying to pick one that just simply, regardless of your fee schedule, we can say, okay, what are you paying on your taxes? What's your projected actual
What are you paying under the pilot?
Right, under the pilot, I'm sorry. And that is the number we're using to say, okay, your fee to the IDA is 1% of that. And they can calculate it and we can calculate it.
Yeah, but it doesn't work in those situations where someone's paying full value.
Right, they're paying, yeah, if they're,
I mean, it works.
it works, but not to their advantage.
Not,
Right.
Then they're not getting a benefit.
Right.
So, am I articulating that correctly?
Well,
Yeah, but I think you could, take back away from that if, what if they're only getting just a little benefit? Somebody who's paying full taxes would be paying a full fee,
Right.
but somebody who's paying, maybe a 5% discount off the
They're gonna pay, under our fee structure, they're gonna pay something for that.
would be paying a lower fee.
Help me out on that. Do the math for me. Wait, well, if the benefit's up to 250, it's 1% of the total gross benefit.
Again, we're talking about, we need to define what we mean by benefit.
Right.
And at least in my gut, benefit is what the amount of taxes that they would otherwise have to pay,
Mm-hmm.
but aren't going to have to pay because of the pilot. I'm not.
That sounds right. That's
I'm
my
not sure how
understanding.
to get there. I like the idea of a fixed formula, but again, it works against somebody who don't negotiate a good pilot, and those who pay more taxes get less benefits.
I guess you can also make the argument, which happens in other cases, there are people that pass on IDA projects because they say, well, the fees associated with the sales tax and mortgage tax, I'm only saving X, my fees are Y, forget it, I'm not gonna bother. Well, I suppose no one's forcing them to do a pilot, and they determine that the deal they're gonna negotiate on the pilot
And Roger
isn't worth it.
alluded to that, saying essentially people are doing the cost benefit.
That's right. Right.
And they do their negotiating based upon what their objectives are, and of course, that's gonna vary project to project and who's doing the negotiating, but.
So,
Right, yes.
And here, in terms of the proposed, the identified fee structures, I wouldn't characterize them as benefits. I would just characterize it as the fee structure.
Right, I'm trying to take it away from being a benefit-based fee structure to just a net percentage off the taxes paid, formula. So, and if someone makes a determination, and that's a valid point, someone makes a determination that the best they could get was a 2% reduction off their full assessed value, but our fees are X, forget it, I don't need it. People make that decision every day with us. They'll say, we've had people say, skip the mortgage recording tax or skip the sales tax because they said, just isn't worth it. And that's their discretion. We're not forcing, anybody on that. So
And if they're not getting any pilot benefits because they're paying.
then don't do a pilot.
Then don't do a pilot.
Right.
I think the system is working for us right now. I wouldn't look into putting that much energy and effort unless it's critically, come to a point where everybody's complaining, or at least 50% of the people are complaining.
Well, it's not so much the complaining. It's not. This isn't being motivated. Champlain Hudson triggered the conversation. This isn't because of that. It was more. We're seeing more and more occasions of pilots being structured that we can't apply our formula. So this is more of an internal
It's
issue.
always difficult though when you try to make your rule based upon the exceptions, all right? So it seems like the example you give, and I'm only saying Champlain now because that's the example you gave. If you're going to change the overall structure to accommodate one type of exception, that's kind of upside down.
Well, again, it's not. This is based on shit. We've had projects where we've collected the minimum when, if you kind of step back, you say, that really wasn't, that wasn't right. Like, for lack of a better word, they probably should have paid more, but our fee structure couldn't apply to the structure of that deal. So it benefited the company. Other companies, like the one where it's 2.5 million, the number would have been actually much bigger. I'm trying to do something that's not unique. It's not because of any one company benefiting or not benefiting. It's taking again, I'll go back to the argument is have a fee schedule that can be applied to any structure. We don't have to be faced with, well, it's just not applicable. We can't apply. I want a formula, and the only formula we said that could come up with that is based on taxes paid. And that may help some people, or pilot paid, I'm sorry. The pilot payments. And that can be applied to any structure, whether you're paying a flat cash amount, whether you're paying an abated amount off your assessment, whether you're negotiating your assessment, whether it's some combination. That's the one constant we can apply a formula to. And we came up with 1% because that seemed to put us in a ballpark, which is a subjective piece of this, that said that's a reasonable, fair return consistent with other fees we received on more traditional pilot schedules. If you try 5% or 0.5, but if you look at that second column, there, which is just a simple 1%, let's throw out I think Tim made the point, we'll throw out the cap, not worried about the cap, it's whatever it is, that 1% gives us a reasonable return. And if there's a small company with a small pilot amount, they're going to pay less than a big company who's paying millions in taxes every year is going to pay more. So the ratios are consistent.
Steve, question. The IDA fee is a one-time upfront payment.
On the pilot fee, we collect that at the time of pilot signing.
Okay, so when you're talking about taxes paid, you're talking about taxes paid
over the life of the pilot, and it's a projection.
Over the life of the pilot.
Right.
Yes, and we will put that in the fee schedule as a projection.
Okay, so that is just if you have a
Right.
10-year pilot or a 30-year pilot, that is.
And our fees are just like our sales tax and mortgage taxes. We've always said we don't negotiate our fees. This is the fee. You can calculate it yourself. It's not a negotiation.
So is everyone comfortable with where we stand today? You want to talk about possibility of tinkering a little bit?
I propose we sleep on it until the next meeting.
Well, this is putting me to sleep, so we have to wait till the next meeting.
That was just the first chapter. Now I really want to get into the weeds on this.
Jokes.
Okay. The start is definitely, you fairly with there. All right.
Again, we don't have to decide this at this meeting. This was just to raise the question. We could follow up and think about it a little bit. I would appreciate anybody's comments as we do this.
To be continued.
Maybe we should go back to them and say that since inflation is there, can we raise our fees?
Only if we're lower than when deflation is.
I know there was another item. I don't know if you wanted to bring it up as far as our policy regarding residential, or do you want to table that for the moment?
Oh, I don't, it's up to the board, but after last month,
And Tim, I don't know if, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is this something that we have the ability to go into executive session on? Is there a rationale?
I don't know what the topic is.
Yeah, I don't know what the topic is either.
Discussing our
policy
regarding
pertaining to residential applications.
Doesn't sound like an executive session.
Okay.
UK counsel.
Unless you're asking for legal advice, and it wouldn't be an executive session, it might just be seeking legal advice, and you just shut the camera off if you're seeking advice from counsel. But it's just a topic for general discussion.
Well, I'll just throw it out there. After reviewing what we did last month and some of the future applications, I have my reservations on the size of these projects, what the impact will be on the villages or towns. I know there's, I think, 3 in the county that I'm gonna call depressed, Suffern, Spring Valley, and Haverstraw. We've done some larger projects both in Haverstraw and Suffern. And I don't see the cost benefit for some of these smaller projects to the municipalities. That's all. And I'm sure it'll be, my opinion will be based on every application as we get it. I just, when we're doing a residential project that only has, 20 units or something along those lines, I don't see where they would merit a tax break, because I don't see it really impacting the area. That's all. I want to get it off my
I think that's
chest.
fair,
And that's on a private project.
Yeah.
That's as it should be.
Yeah.
Open for discussion at the board
Right.
meeting and put to a vote.
Well, again, we'll vote on them as they come in.
Right.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just add that in depressed areas, the redevelopment does help the municipality. The flip side to that is residential does not really generate job creation.
And is it still true that the cost of public services to residential always exceeds the taxes paid by the residential?
That's why commercial projects are so critical to a community.
Okay.
Move on.
Absolutely.
We have our treasurer's report.
You'll see, excuse me. The only thing that comes out a little bit is the executive furniture. The $3,000, I'm assuming that's for this table. So please, nobody carve your initials into the table.
No bubble gum underneath there.
Meanwhile, I don't see any coasters.
No, I know, we're gonna have to talk about that.
I know.
Other than that, it's just the normal,
I love your light fixtures.
I can give that credit directly to Howard.
Wonderful.
I gotta tell you, the place looks great. It really, really does. It's, we have our own place. You did a great job, Al.
We have to, before we leave today's meeting, we have to get everybody scheduled because we're taking pictures, portraits that hang on the wall of,
Oh, okay.
of everybody around the table.
I was thinking we put what I'll call the Tappan Zee Bridge right there.
Yeah.
Good name.
Actually, that's not a bad suggestion. That would be nice to have the Tappan Zee Bridge there.
Or the Malcolm Wilson Bridge, as it was.
Right.
Or the Mario Cuomo, whatever. We'll have options.
Insert name here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, back to the treasury report, as you see, all the checks are in the bank. And again, just so everybody knows, if there's anything that has to do with Steve's expenses, it has to be approved by me, I sign off on it. Anything else is done by the administration.
I do want to ask something about the finances. I don't know if I've asked this before. Can IDAs put money into T-bills? Can they get an account with Treasury Direct? T-bills are paying some really nice numbers right now, above what CDs are paying. I mean, recently the 13-week was paying 1.7%. The
Yes,
26-week
yes.
were paying over 2, and then the 1 year T-bills were over 3% now.
And we have money come due in September.
So I don't know if we're able to do that. Certainly, they're guaranteed by the federal government, so they're safer than
I think you should
CDs.
assess the credit worthiness of the federal government.
Yeah, well, all right, but I just wanted, because I'm seeing the
Right, yes.
the T-bill
I
rates.
think it's 10%.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have to be a citizen, you have to be a citizen of India to get that rate.
Raj. No, US citizen, dude.
Okay,
I'm proud of
Well,
it.
that's actually kind of easy, because you don't have to worry about the collateralization.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it's unlimited. But,
Um,
so the question is though, I don't know if as a public body, we can open a Treasury Direct account, or if we just have to buy it through the bank.
Probably be general municipal law, section 11. That's where the municipal investments are. And you're considered a municipality.
Yeah. for
Gee, I'll
domestic
take a look.
purposes.
I'll report back to you.
I mean, we can look at, you have to look at our investment policy. and
Most
look at that,
banks
so,
have this year.
Yeah, I know there were some very strict
What?
limitations to what the controller's office says we can do.
Yeah, it's all less than 1 year. I mean, they go
Well, we'll
4,
go into
8,
that.
13, 26, and 52. And you look at the rates, I-bonds, I wish we could buy I-bonds. They're paying 9.72% right now.
Just one other point when it comes to our finances. Our auditors, not Berard Associates, which does our monthly books, but our auditors notified us that they are no longer doing audits. So, yeah, they're changing. Apparently, this is something, a trend in that industry. They're changing the gist of their business, so we're getting away from audits. So we have to find a new auditor. So we have a process, I believe, because the amount we have to do an RFP on it and all that. And that's how we did it last time. So this will let you know, we don't, we have time, of course, but it'll have to be before next, for 2022.
All right, anything else, folks? All right, Stephen, we'll be back those minutes.
Okay, we called to order at 9:03. Before the meeting started, the chairman discussed updating, that there's an update to Robert's Rules of Order. Matter was discussed as far as, more relaxed format. Council, Sharetta noted that our bylaws do reference the rules, and I am paraphrasing this, and that given, that we are a public body, we should maintain a more formal process of motions and seconds as compared to a private entity board or a nonprofit board where there's not as much scrutiny of that. So the board discussed the matter, and I believe we're going to maintain our current process. Our action items, authorizing resolution. I got to get the who made the motion. Right. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry, I started on the wrong page. Motion by Tim Riley, seconded by Howard Hellman. Prior to the vote, the executive director, I just wrote on the table. All right, Ron. The executive director reported that there were 5 public hearings held in each of the affected municipalities for this project. There was one member of the public attended one of the public hearings and made a comment voicing his objection to the the IDA authorizing.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did he submit any written statement?
No, but it was recorded.
I saw it. I was watching. I didn't watch all 31 minutes.
Yeah, that was it. He did not submit a written thing. He just did an oral that stood in front of the camera.
All right.
So again, motion by Tim Riley, second by Howard Hellman. Motion passed. Matter of fee schedules. Executive director brought up that staff, we've been considering looking at a fee schedule that may be more universally applied to the different fee schedules. Presentation on various fee schedules and other items was presented by IDA Administrator Lisa Santiago, outlining various fees, various formulas that have been considered based on various projects, and also comparing them to other regional IDAs. The board discussed the matter at length as far as different options, questioned the matter as far as whether, should it be amended to what. Following discussion, it was agreed by the board that the matter would be continued to be discussed and considered. Board member Tim Riley raised the question of also in new business, idea, concerns regarding residential housing projects. And exactly determine what the benefit would be to municipalities. Following discussion by the board, board acknowledged that each project is considered on a case-by-case basis, and that matter then was resolved at that point. Board considered the treasurer's report. Treasurer reported on the financials for May 2022. There was no comments. And then also Chair Dranov raised a question of investing in T-bills, treasury bills, and matters that we will look into, a council will look into with the executive director as far as that applicability. And that's it.
Any changes, additions, clarifications? All right, we want to move to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? All right. Smoke them if you got them.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
So when we buy furniture, when we buy the furniture, so this much furniture,
Yeah.
sales tax free because they're not.
You got
that?
It's not as much fun when
I know, I know.
Yeah.
Are there any dispensaries around?
Yeah, just brought up, think of stuff.
Yes, if you want to stick around.